Hello and welcome again to Fantasy Express. My name is Gretchen Cartwright, and tonight we'll be determining which team selects where in this year's city and team name fantasy football draft. We're in for a monumental show. Not only will you witness the selections as they're randomly drawn, but we'll also be taking you around the league to several locations throughout tonight's show. Let's send it over to the home of our defending Fantasy Bowl champions, the Liberty City Legion, where CTN correspondent Pedro Medina is waiting.
Thank you very much, Gretchen. My name is Pedro Medina, and waiting is the ideal word, as Liberty City will be waiting quite a while before their name is called tonight. But I have the beautiful Lady Liberty behind me, and soon I'll be making my way into the Statue of Liberty Museum. The night is still young in Liberty City. Let's head over to Los Angeles, where I hear there's a new team in town. Isn't that right, Alicia?
You heard correctly, Pedro, and I'm enjoying every minute of fun in the sun here in LA. As some of you might remember from our very first Fantasy Express, my name is Alicia Corey. The scenery has changed for the elitists, and I'm sure they hope their fortunes are soon to be changing as well. And speaking of fortunes, let's take you to Mark Roberts, who's currently out in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Alicia. I'm very happy to be a part of this historic show tonight. As you can see, I'm out in front of the world-renowned Treasure Island Hotel and Casino, where you can get panoramic views of the Las Vegas Strip. Speaking of views, I know Ron Parson would like to put last season's performance in his rear view. A good position in tonight's selection show could help the Venom's future. Now let's head out to Carisha Molden, who's in Lake Jackson.
There's a party happening behind me in the Grape Taste restaurant where several representatives of Lake Jackson's organization are watching tonight's draft pick reveal show. The defending Pacific Conference champions are looking to be one of what would be only 4 teams to return to the Fantasy Bowl in back-to-back years. We'll see how the pieces fall in tonight's affairs. If we're talking about champions, then it's only right we head over to Croydon, where Sean Diamond is awaiting.
Welcome to the home of the cannibals. As you can see, this is the only place in the CTN where you'll see two John Burho trophies. It's been 8 years since Croydon won their last championship, and fans are itching for another. The number 1 overall pick could help this franchise return to prominence once more. Hopefully I'll be seeing you again shortly, but for now, let's send it back to the studio where Gretchen is ready to get this event underway.
Thank you. I know everyone is excited to start putting together their draft boards, so why delay things any longer? Let's see exactly who will be receiving the first overall selection in 2022 City and Team Name Fantasy Football Draft. Here it is. With the first overall selection in the 2022 City and Team Name Fantasy Football Draft, it's the Kalamazoo Bombermen. This is Kalamazoo's second time holding the number 1 pick, the last time in 2018. They selected Le'Veon Bell, who never played a down for them all season. Last year, the Bombermen finished 6-7. They'd make the playoffs as the 4th seed and defeat Guthrie and Kansas City before losing to Lake Jackson in the Pacific Conference Championship. This pick could be what finally takes them all the way. Now, let's see who'll be selecting at pick number 2. It's only fitting the team that defeated Kalamazoo gets the very next pick. The Lake Jackson Cyclones are holders of the number 2 selection. Let's send it out to Carisha Molden, who's still outside of the Grape Taste restaurant, for more information on the Cyclones.
Thanks, Gretchen. The vibe is all good here in Lake Jackson after their name was called for the second pick in 2022's draft. The celebration here might not stop until the early morning hours. Last season, Lake Jackson finished with a 7-6 record, which was good enough to win the West Division. As the second seed in the conference, the Cyclones pushed past Mile High and Kalamazoo on their way to representing the Pacific Conference in Fantasy Bowl 14. Unfortunately, the Cyclones would lose to the Liberty City Legion, with Antonio Brown's impromptu exit from the championship game being an unforgettable Fantasy Bowl moment that'll live on in infamy. 2022 brings something new for Lake Jackson, as they'll be heading to the South Division and switching over to the Atlantic Conference. And if you thought things couldn't get more interesting, they're currently a team without a coach after Jeff Fisher left the team to take a position with the USFL this past offseason. Last year, the Cyclones held the 15th pick and selected Lake Jackson regular Dak Prescott, who has led this team to back-to-back winning seasons. The competition is going to be stiffer this season, with 3 Fantasy Bowl champions residing in their new division. Lake Jackson will have to make a smart decision with this number 2 overall selection. Well, I think it's time I partake in the festivities with the rest of Lake Jackson tonight. I can't wait to try their chocolate martini. I heard it's literally dessert in a glass. Back to you, Gretchen.
Hey no, Carisha. You better be careful. You remember what happened the last time you drank, girl. Let's continue our journey and see who'll be picking with the 3rd selection. The 3rd pick in the draft belongs to the first of our rookie teams of 2022. This is a solid position for a team just getting their feet wet in the CTN. While the cadets have no body of work to examine, they'll have ample opportunity to prove themselves in the Central Division. We've had some rookie teams come close to winning the championship, but none have ever been able to get the job done. We'll see if Carson will sink or swim once they take the field. Let's go back to the lottery and see who'll receive the 4th pick in this year's draft. And it's the San Francisco Vatos that will follow the Carson Cadets at pick number 4. This will be the Vatos' 3rd season. They made some decent progress from their rookie year. I mean, it's not really hard to improve when you go only 1-12 in your inaugural season. Crazy! In the beginning of their 2nd year, they were lucky enough to receive the number 1 overall pick. They draft Christian McCaffrey, but injuries prevented him from really having any consistent positive effects on the team. With both Lake Jackson and Guthrie moving to the south, the West is wide open. San Francisco could definitely make a statement. A franchise-defining player could fall to the Vatos at number 4. They'll just have to do their homework to find him. Let's move along to see who'll pick number 5. Selection number 5 falls to the Woodbury Walking Dead. Woodbury has a special place in the hearts of CTN fans as the lovable losers. Poor baby. Mommy loves you. Entering their 6th season, the Walking Dead have yet to find their way into the playoffs. Woodbury's best record of 6-7 happened back in 2017. At 5-8 last season, the Walking Dead was just 1 victory away from earning a wildcard berth and finally getting that monkey off their back. The fact remains that Woodbury has yet to finish a season at or above 500. With the 14th pick in last year's draft, they selected Travis Kelce. The Walking Dead won't have to wait as long to get their man this season. It'll be interesting to see who they'll select with the 5th pick in their possession. Let's move onward and upward to see who has the next draft selection. Welcome back to the Minneapolis Blazians. It's been 7 long years since Minneapolis blessed the CTN with their presence, and it's great to have them back. Interesting fact, the Blazians' run lasted for 3 seasons, and in that time they never won more than 6 games on the year. Hopefully, Minneapolis is motivated not only on the field but in the front office to exceed their past misfortunes. The fans have high expectations because they're not rookies. All eyes will definitely be glued to all things Minneapolis in 2022. It's time to draw another name from the selector. Who's picking at number 7? If I could sing, I'd give you the best version of "Oh, Canada" right now. We are all very happy to have our first team outside of the United States. Many people thought it would be London, but for travel purposes and with the pandemic, the commissioner figured Toronto would be the league's best bet. Much like the Cadets, we don't know a lot about the Toronto Thundertails. They enter the East Division where Croydon and Liberty City both have championship hardware. Then you got a perennial contender in a team like Saylorville as well. It'll be tough for Toronto to establish themselves right from the gate. But with the 7th pick, there's sure to be an impact player available to them on draft night. With that being said, let's move along to see who inherits selection number 8. Oh yes! It's going to be the Croydon Cannibals who hold pick number 8 in 2022 City and Team Name Fantasy Football Draft. And what an interesting pick this should be. Let's head over to Mark Diamond, who's doing his best to make sure Croydon's John Burho trophies aren't collecting any dust.
Thank you, and actually I'm Sean. Mark is the British guy in Las Vegas, but I digress. No other team in the CTN has to worry about the maintenance of 2 Fantasy Bowl trophies, but that's a task I'm sure Croydon doesn't mind. The Cannibals are going through a transition. They've fired their head coach in the offseason, and owner, Cameron G., has expressed interest in adopting a new approach to the draft this year without going into too much detail about exactly what he plans to do. Croydon's last Fantasy Bowl victory occurred in 2014. The next year, they almost became the first team to repeat, but fell short in the championship game to the Hollywood scene. They've only captured 1 playoff victory in 3 playoff appearances since. Last season, they finished at the bottom of the East with a 5-8 record. They held the 11th pick in the draft and selected Ezekiel Elliott. If Croydon wants to party at the end of the season, they'll need a dynamic pick at number 8. Gretchen? Or is it Alicia?
Okay, Captain Petty. Better put some respect on my name. Let's get back on track before this gets ugly. Sounding like a whole robot out here. Name is Sean. Meh. Let's see who selects the pick 9. It's going to be the Saylorville North Jackets, and what makes this interesting is they're picking behind both Toronto and Croydon in this draft, who of course are both teams in the East Division. The North Jackets had appeared in back-to-back Fantasy Bowls prior to last season, but unfortunately came away empty-handed on both occasions. Saylorville has actually co-featured in 3 Fantasy Bowls, but luck has never been on their side, on more levels than I can count. Last season, they finished 2nd in the East with a 6-7 record before being ousted in the wild card round to the Lexington All-Stars. With the 7th pick in that year's draft, they brought back their most reliable running back in franchise history, Nick Chubb. Their rivalry with current champs Liberty City is well documented, and the fact the Legion won a championship before them has to hurt them deep down in their soul. Is Saylorville's window closing? Or do they have another run left in them? We'll find out soon enough. Let's see who's selecting at pick number 10. With the 10th pick in the 2022 City and Team Name Fantasy Football Draft, it is the Central Division champion Kansas City Fusion. Kansas City shared a league-best 11-2 record with the Virginia Beach Wavemakers last season, which was good enough to get them home field advantage in the Pacific. Unfortunately for them, for the third year in a row, they got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. That's what I call a triple doink. The Fusion know how to rack up regular season victories, but they just can't seem to win the big games when it counts the most. Aaron Jones was Kansas City's pick in 2021's draft with the 8th selection. There's not much of a drastic difference in Kansas City's draft position this year at number 10. There's no trophy for looking like champs between weeks 1 and 13, then looking like chumps in the postseason. We'll see if they can pinpoint what's holding them back in what will be season number 4. Until then, let's continue on with tonight's proceedings. Selection number 11 is up next. Los Angeles has returned to the CTN, but we're not talking about the Dons or the Hollywood scene or even the Long Beach Drive. The former Palm Beach elitists have traveled cross-country in hopes of reinventing themselves. For more on that, let's send it over to our very own Alicia Corey.
Thank you, Gretchen. From the beach to the practice facility, everything is beautiful out in LA. The elitists spent 8 seasons in Palm Beach and don't have much to show for it. Never the model of consistency, the elitists would go from posting an incredible record of 10-3 one season to a paltry 5-7 the very next year. Their owner, Trey Hollis, has roots in Los Angeles, and his food empire, Third's Barbecue, has taken the City of Angels by storm. The elitists of Palm Beach never made it out of the first round of the playoffs, but the elitists of Los Angeles hope to go far beyond that and bring home the John Burho Trophy. Last year, the elitists held the 10th pick and drafted Najee Harris. LA is the home of champions, just ask the Long Beach Drive and Hollywood scene. There's obviously something in the water out there, and all elitist fans are hoping this team drinks a whole bunch of whatever it is. Back to you, Gretchen.
That's what I call great journalism. We'll see if the elitists can reinvent themselves and change their narrative. The selection at number 12 is ready to be revealed. Who will it be? At number 12, it will be the Guthrie Gorilla family selecting the player of their choice. Similar to the elitists, Guthrie is also in unfamiliar territory. With the expansion of the league this season, teams like Guthrie and Lake Jackson found themselves on the move. Not geographically, but division and conference-wise. Guthrie won the Fantasy Bowl back in 2018, but did so while being situated in the West Division and Pacific Conference. It's a new beginning for the Gorilla family now. As Carisha stated earlier, the South is absolutely loaded. Lebanon is a former champion, as is Virginia Beach, and Lake Jackson was just in the Fantasy Bowl last season. In a strange turn of events, Guthrie held the 12th selection last year as well, and they drafted Stefon Diggs, who wasn't always completely reliable. I'm sure they're praying history doesn't repeat itself, because while they finished 6-7 and made it to the playoffs, they got bounced out quickly by Kalamazoo in the wild card round. Guthrie wrote the book on how the West was won, but can they write a sequel about the South? In time we'll find out. Until then, let's see who's picking at lucky number 13. Number 13, it's another one of our rookies, the Cleveland Bullets. This is the first franchise the CTN has ever had in the rock and roll capital of the world. Before we go any further, I'd like to send my best wishes to Cleveland's owner, Brian Hall. We're all aware of what he's dealing with, and we're sending our love and prayers. Get better, Brian. So one of Cleveland's nicknames is the mistake on the lake. I'm sure the Bullets will do everything in their power to make sure that doesn't apply to them. We're looking forward to seeing what they can do in the Central Division amongst teams like Kansas City, Kalamazoo, the returning Minneapolis Blazions, and fellow rookies, the Carson Cadets. Pick number 14 is ready to be revealed. There's only 6 teams left. Who do you think it is? Let's find out. It's going to be the All-Stars of Lexington that make their selection at this position. Lexington is a team that still hasn't really established themselves yet. They made their debut in 2015 and have 3 postseason appearances to their credit. Just last season, they won their first ever playoff game against Slayersville. Maybe things are looking up for Lexington, and that was the start of their true arrival to the CTN. Lexington selected Devontae Adams with the 9th pick last year. They'll have to dig just a little deeper in 2022 if they want even better results moving forward. We're 3/4 of the way through the show, and it's time to find out who will be drafting with the 15th selection this season. Oh goodness, it's the Lebanon Pioneers. The Pioneers are sort of a question mark all around. Has anyone heard from or seen their owner, Stu Akers? We don't even know if this team's being controlled by a man or a machine. In their heyday, the Pioneers were contenders. They even won Fantasy Bowl 9. They were big-time contributors to the success of the CTN, but then things changed and ownership just disappeared. Like the lost colony of Roanoke. Lebanon held the 5th selection in last year's draft and picked Austin Eckler. If we're lucky, maybe we'll be graced by Stu's presence this season. Only God truly knows. But whatever is happening over there is working. They finished 9-4, which was actually the 2nd best record in the league. Insane. Last year, there were 16 teams in the CTN. And this is where our draft would have ended, but not this year. Let's see who owns the 16th overall selection. Viva Las Vegas! It'll be the Venom who hold the 16th pick. Let's send it out to Mark. Yes, the real Mark, who's in Las Vegas, and get some more insight as to what the Venom might do this season.
I'm Mark Roberts, and I'd like to make one correction to something Sean Diamond said earlier. For the record, I'm not British, I'm Irish. You can get proper cracked for making a mistake like that where I come from, my friend. Anyway, I'm tucked away inside the luxurious Treasure Island Hotel and Casino where rates start at just $56 with free cancellations until September 3rd, in case you wondered. The Venom went 5-8 in their rookie year and have high hopes of accomplishing more in their sophomore season. When speaking to owner Ron Parson, he said his biggest takeaway from last year was paying attention to the rules. His lack of wherewithal led to a less than flattering record, no playoff appearance, a pissed-off fan base and a coach on the hot seat. If identifying the problem is the first step, it appears Vegas might just see more success in 2022.
Absolutely, Mark. And drafting Saquon Barkley at number 6 last year didn't help their cause either. It's time to find out who secured pick number 17 in this season's draft. We're in uncharted territory here, folks. This is the first time the CTN has given away a 17th pick, and it's only fitting that it goes to one of our newest additions. The Seattle Slobberknockers are ushering in a new era for the CTN. Ever since Fantasy Bowl 13 was held in Seattle, they've wanted a franchise of their own, and here it is. The West Division is wide open, and I mean gaping. It's not unrealistic to think Seattle could come in and just take over from day one. If Seattle plays their cards right and puts their draft caps on, success could come at them quickly. Look at what Baltimore, Slayerville, Mile High did as rookies. Speaking of Mile High, the Cushmasters are primed to be a thorn in the Slobberknockers' side, and vice versa. We could have a serious rivalry on our hands. There's only 3 picks left, and we know who's last. So the real question is, who's next? I promise this will be more exciting than any Goldberg match you've ever seen. It's the 2020 Fantasy Bowl champions, the Virginia Beach Wavemakers. They would know all about late-round picks as they drafted Jonathan Taylor 13th overall last year. As I stated earlier, both Virginia Beach and Kansas City had matching league best 11-2 records, but neither them nor the Fusion even made it to the Fantasy Bowl. The Wavemakers saw their season end in the Atlantic Conference Championship game against our current reigning champions, the Liberty City Legion. Virginia Beach is in incredible company this year with the additions of Lake Jackson and Guthrie in the south. Not to mention their in-state rivals, Lebanon, always plays them tough as well. We'll see if the Wavemakers can rebound and make it back to the promised land this season. Well, here we go. 2 picks left. Process of elimination will tell you who's drafting at number 19. Mile High wants all the smoke, and they're here to prove in year 3 they're no joke. Bars. I might have a future rocking the mic, but I'm by no means trying to make this about me. We're here to talk about the future of the Mile High Cushmasters, a team 2 years removed from a Fantasy Bowl appearance. What can they do differently? Well, last season they had the 4th overall pick and drafted Alvin Kamara. They won't be as lucky to get a player of that caliber this year, but this is where draft prep comes into play. With the snake format, the Cushmasters will get 2 selections over a 4-pick span. Those are the perks of late-round selections. Speaking of rounds, in the divisional round, Mile High lost to Pacific Conference champions Lake Jackson. 2 playoff appearances in 2 seasons is incredibly impressive, though. Another fact worth mentioning, which can't be understated, is that Mile High has moved from the Central Division to the West. Believe it or not, with only 2 years of experience, they're currently the most successful team in the division. If you added up the Vatos, Slobberknockers, Venom, and Elitists playoff wins, you'd come up with a big 0. The action out west will certainly be interesting to say the least. Now it's time we transition from selection number 19 to revealing the 20th and final pick of the 2022 CTN Fantasy Draft. They say everyone has a fire, but the champions know when to ignite the spark. The Liberty City Legion knew exactly when to get their flame on. Guess that makes them flamers? Either way, Liberty City went on a 4-game winning streak on their way to the John Burho Trophy. The Legion just knew how to win. Let's head back out to Liberty City, where Pedro Medina has been waiting all night for this particular moment. Take it away, Pedro.
Thank you very much. I'm inside of the Statue of Liberty Museum, and the amount of history within these walls is unfathomable. But the history we'll be discussing tonight involves the Liberty City Legion. They had to overcome a lot to get their names etched into the history books. The Legion finished atop the East with a franchise best 8-5 record after finishing dead last in the division just a year before. They would go on to defeat the Virginia Beach Wavemakers in the Atlantic Conference Championship game. What this team accomplished, from the front office to the coaches and to the players on the field, is absolutely commendable. One thing that helped was having the number 2 overall pick in last season's draft. With that pick they selected running back Dalvin Cook. You might wonder what's on their mind now that they've reached the pinnacle, the apex of the CTN. The answer is actually quite simple. Repeat. Let's send it back to Gretchen in the studio.
What an incredible show this has been tonight. I'm so thankful to those of you who tuned in to watch. The 15th season of the CTN is in full swing, and just a couple short weeks from now, we'll all be watching to see how each owner decides to use their draft picks. The time is here, and the time is now. Good luck to everyone. Have a good night, and I'll see you all again soon.